during the related show are those of the show personalities and guest alone, and not those of Vic Canellis Media Group, its parent, affiliates, or stations. VCMG Live is not responsible for any content, information, or opinions expressed. User bears full responsibility for their reliance on such content, information, or opinions.
Welcome to Meet the Experts with Mike Velarde. Join us each week as we bring you expert opinions on different subjects ranging from medical to political and community to economy. We answer all of your questions live. Have a question? Call into the show at 888-994-4995, Studio A. And now to Mike.
Welcome to tonight's show. I'm your host, Mike Velarde, on Meet the Experts. Now, what you're looking at is the moving motif. That's why I'm not in a three-piece suit, and that's why my friend Elsa Figueres, who is a former Department of Justice attorney who's here with me, she's dressed down because she's helping me move. So we're moving to Ocala. I'm moving to Ocala next week, so we'll be doing the show live from Ocala starting next week, and we just want you to enjoy us tonight as we're going to be talking about politics. Elsa is a former Department of Justice attorney, and we're going to talk about what transpired this week. The indictments of Hunter Biden, the indictments of Donald Trump, and what's going on at the Justice Department. So I thought it would be great to have an expert who actually had the opportunity to work for the Department of Justice and as an attorney and tell us what's going on. So Elsa, welcome to Meet the Expert. You might want to use the mic.
It's a pleasure. I might want to use the mic. I'm not used to this kind of stuff.
So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So first, they came down with these 3 indictments on Hunter Biden. What do you think of those indictments? 2 were for tax charges, misdemeanor tax charges, and 1 was for a gun charge, which was a felony, but they were going to plea it out in such a way that if he goes into a program, the felony disappears.
It's called a diversion, and it really pisses me off because all you need to do is get some cocaine. All you need to do is get some cocaine before you commit the crime, and then you'll get a diversion. They do that with attorneys, when they discipline them. If you're tripped out on cocaine and you steal from your trust account, you get a diversion and you get to come right back. But if you steal from your trust account and you're not on drugs, then you go to jail.
Okay, so explain exactly what a diversion is.
A diversion is where a person, because of the use of drugs, gets their... It's exactly what the word means. It's a diversion. It gets diverted so that he doesn't get the consequence that he normally would get. And to me, that's a travesty because we got Hillary Clinton, how many thousands of emails that she had. She put a hammer to her Blackberries, several of them. She put bleach bit. She did it all volitionally, knowingly, voluntarily, intelligently. Everybody knew about it. And she gets nothing. So
my understanding is that they haven't done a gun charge diversion in like 9 years.
Well, I wasn't in the criminal section of the Department of Justice, but a gun charge diversion should be something that's insanely difficult to get.
Right.
And the average guy on the street that has a gun charge, good luck with getting a diversion.
Right.
It's 2 tracks of justice. It's the reason why Hillary was never sworn in. I think she was even interviewed like over a holiday weekend. I would think it was over the 4th of July. They interviewed her, and they never did anything to her over that. But now the reason that they're indicting Hunter is so they have something to say. Oh, you know what? We just did this. Now we can put it behind us, and we can move on to the election, and Biden can start campaigning. They needed to do something to him so it would look legitimate.
Right, but now what's interesting is, I was a former IRS special agent, and my understanding is from some of the whistleblowers who were the supervisory special agent at IRS, the criminal division, as well as the agent themselves, was that they let the statute of limitations blow on a 2015 charge of about $400,000. So he wasn't charged. The statute blew. So... And then they came back with 2 misdemeanor charges, which is very unusual, failure to pay misdemeanor charges.
What are the usual charges?
Usually it's going to be evasion. You're going to charge them with a felony evasion.
So it's evasion and it's jailable.
Yeah, and then of course if it's coming, if it's foreign money, you got money laundering, I mean, you could have had a whole host of other charges that were not charged. But by charging them and him taking a deal, it means you can't go back in those years.
Double
And
jeopardy attaches.
Right, that's exactly right. Double jeopardy attaches. So as a result, he basically gets a free pass. And of course, the other side of the coin is we had the DA in Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, indict Trump on a legal theory that I don't think I could even explain because it makes absolutely no sense. When he tried to take that money that went to the porn star there and tie it into his federal campaign, but it wasn't campaign money. So how do we explain that?
I don't know how we explain that. There's, I mean, that's just something that's done. It's like you pay, your lawyer pays for someone to do or not do something. And I don't know. I don't know where can they trace that money back to the campaign?
No,
I don't think
they can't.
Trump would have been stupid enough to do that.
No, he wasn't. They
So
can't.
if it's not a violation of, because that's what they got Dinesh D'Souza on, remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Dinesh D'Souza got indicted because I think it was a relative that he gave her some money to give to a campaign, and that's how he got pinched.
Right. Okay.
Remember that?
But
So
that's totally different than what happened in the Trump case.
yeah, but it's something that they're grasping for straws.
Right.
They went through his tax returns with a fine-tooth comb, and they couldn't find anything. I mean, you think if they would have found something in his tax returns, he'd be on his way down with that.
Yeah. Well, how about these indictments on the Presidential Records Act?
I think that's totally ludicrous because every president that's ever been alive has taken classified documents, has handled classified documents in a way that there's so much of a volume of documents that you handle that everybody that's been in that office has been guilty of some breach. So it's like, who is it? Warren Buffett that says if you follow somebody close enough for 500 miles, you'll find something to stop them over.
Right. Of course. How about the Sox case? I mean, there's case law when Clinton was president.
Yeah.
The Sox case. So it seems to me that they're really
Explain that to people that they don't
well,
remember.
Well, basically, a liberal judge, an Obama-appointed judge, basically they tried to, charge Clinton, but they said no. If he has a power to declassify whenever he wants. It's at his discretion. And the Presidential Records Act was never meant to be a criminal charge. It's a civil one. It's civil.
I think the presidential.
It's a civil.
Yeah, I think the Presidential Records Act trumps the Espionage Act.
Right.
Because you remember the Espionage Act. I don't know if you guys remember. There was a sailor that took a picture of a submarine that was
Right.
classified.
I do remember that,
He went
yes.
away for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
But the Presidential Records Act stands above the Espionage Act.
Right.
Like it's a civil thing. You can't take a civil violation, which he didn't, because
Right.
then you would have to indict. Then you would have to charge every president,
Right. And you
with
can't
that.
and criminalize it.
and you'd have to get Biden on it because we found a bunch of stuff next to his Corvette, did we not?
Well, let's talk about that. Now, President Trump is protected by the United States Secret Service. Well, what does that mean? That means Mar-a-Lago is a secured location. If you and I wanted to go to Mar-a-Lago tomorrow, we just can't get in. We're going to be stopped. We're going to be searched by the Secret Service. We're going to be, you cannot, it's secured. So you have to go through security. So what that means is all those records were secured. But when Joe Biden was vice president, he had no Secret Service protection. That meant his house was unsecured, and anybody could have went to his house and looked at those records. So we have, a standard that's totally different because it's going to be hard to get over the fact that all the records that Trump had were secured by the United States Secret Service. They protected that house.
Yep.
And as a result, you couldn't get to the records. In Biden's case, when he was vice president, then when he was out of office, before he became president, there was no Secret Service protection. Anybody could have went to the house. Anybody could have looked at the records without any issues.
And remember how they pinched Flynn on that one? Remember General Flynn? They got him for that
Well-
because he had records outside of a skiff at his house. So no different from Biden, but General Flynn got in trouble and Biden didn't. Why? Because General Flynn was on the Republican side of the chart.
Well, yeah, General Flynn got entrapped with that line to the FBI, and that's why it was overturned, and he was made whole. But it cost him a whole bunch of money to go through that process.
Remind me about that. How was it that they reversed that?
Well, because what happened was they they got into the notes of the FBI agents. First of all, they never read him his rights. And he was not represented by an attorney. They told him he didn't have to. They just wanted to talk to him.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay, and then they basically said to him, look, if you don't plea to this, we're going after your sons.
That's right.
And so he did it to protect his family. So when all the details had come out, especially from the notes of the FBI agents, they could see that it was really more entrapment than anything else.
Yeah, that was, remember when Comey said, I just said, why don't we just send a couple of guys over there?
Okay.
Remember that? Remember that?
Yeah.
When he said it, he says, we'll just send a couple of guys over there and just talk to him,
Right.
intending to entrap him the whole way.
Right. Right. And he never should do that. It's never a good idea when you're talking to law enforcement, you're not represented. So just hold it up. Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Yeah, because if it's not close, they're not going to be
Yeah,
able
I'm
to
not
hear you.
used to this.
I know. So you're just going to have to get used to the microphone.
Get
right
used
by
to the
your mouth,
microphone, it's
man.
right next to my mouth.
Right, exactly. All right. So, I mean, so when you worked at the Department of Justice, just give us a little background. I mean, was it a fair and honest agency?
I started at the Department of Justice on the heels of the Waco thing.
Okay.
So Janet Reno was the boss at the time, and everybody was on pins and needles. And my experience is that everything was put through a political filter. Instead of just taking your cases and going with your cases wherever they lead, it was a lot more contrived, and like there was an agenda. There was an agenda of how is it going to look, what is it going to do for the. It was extremely politicized back then. I think that was the beginning of, you had I think it was Kendall Coffey before that, was it? No, well, down here it was locally. I'm thinking about Janet Reno was over the whole thing. And I think the Department of Justice drastically changed after the Waco thing. I think she was on pins and needles, and she was scared. She was terrified after that.
Well, that was a nightmare. That was a total disaster.
And that was the environment I came into. So it didn't seem like we were working. We had the freedom to just work the cases and let the cases go where they may.
Well, she was the Attorney General.
She was the Attorney General.
And so the Attorney General has to pretty much approve what you're working, what you're not working, right? Where your time's going to be spent. I mean, what they usually do in the federal government is each agency has a budget, and the budget dictates where you're going to spend your time. So that dictates the priorities. So let's say I'm just going to make something up now. Let's say it's the criminal division of the IRS, right? They're going to mandate you spend 20% of your time on drug cases, 10% of your time on bad tax repairs, 5% of your time on organized crime, and basically every month you do a time sheet, and at the end of the year they want to see those hours play out. That time is being focused on what the priorities of the agency are. And I would imagine it's pretty similar at the Department of Justice. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And that's what ends up screwing everything up, because there may be things that come up that require more attention, but they're not given the attention because the road was paved beforehand. So justice isn't really served because you're going in a predetermined route where, you should have the flexibility to maneuver and go where the cases lead you, and that's not the way it works. But back to this thing with Hunter, I think people in this country are getting it, and I think they're tired of it. I think we're going to see now. The problem is, like you and I were talking before the show, that it doesn't matter how anybody votes, because the Republicans, we were talking about this right before the show, the Republicans are worried about campaigning, and the Democrats are worried about how they're going to count the votes and what are the boots on the ground that they're going to have to make sure that the ballots are counted and it ends up going their way. So the Republican base may be outraged by this, and there may be more and more people. I mean, isn't it the case, correct me if I'm wrong, that Donald Trump got 10 million more votes the second time around than he did the first time? And Biden got more votes than Obama?
Yeah,
I mean, how does anybody believe that happened?
well, because those dead Civil War veterans, they always vote Democrat. And when you can count votes after the election, which is what was allowed because of the COVID restrictions they had in place.
Yep.
It was, they were able to meet the numbers, because now you need, you need 700,000 votes. Whatever you need, you can be manufactured. And that, as we were talking about that 2000 Mules video, where they showed them stuffing the ballot boxes, or with mail-in ballots.
They got that 2000. Explain to people, the 2000 Mules video was a video piece done by Dinesh D'Souza.
Yes, we got to go to a commercial break, and as soon as we get back, you're going to explain it.
Text alert! Text alert!
I was receiving letter after letter from the IRS.
I got Mike Velati on the phone, and I said, Mike, I got a problem.
He took the pressure off my shoulders.
He just made me feel like I had Superman on my side.
Trust me, he's the man to go to.
IRS problems? I'm Mike Velarde, enrolled agent. I can help. My company, Winning Tax Solutions, has always gotten our clients the best possible results. Visit us at winningtaxsolutions.com or call us today.
This message was brought to you by Warburg Equities and the Cricken Law Trust.
Hi, I'm Adam, an associate with the Cricken Law Trust. We're here to help you process money owed to you through the CARES Act. If your business employed 10 or more people and maintained payroll taxes through the 2021 shutdown, the Cricken Law Trust can help you get your money back. This money is yours, but if you don't apply now, you might lose this opportunity and it'll be gone forever. Contact us now. Go to www.my123erc.com. Now that's www.my123erc.com.
You've been watching Meet the Experts with Mike Velarde. If you have any questions, call in at 888-994-4995, Studio A. And now, back to the show.
Okay, welcome back. All right, Elsa, we stopped you as you were explaining that 2000 Mules video to our audience. Go ahead.
Yeah, the 2000 Mules video was done by Dinesh D'Souza, who did a couple of other. I do you remember the other ones that he did? 2016, the one about Obama.
Yes.
So what they did was they went back and they spent a bunch of money purchasing data, geofencing data, where they were able to track these mules. And the reason that they call them mules is because people that transport drugs are called mules. And they had these people that through their cell phones, they were able to track them to like 5, 6, 7, 10, 17 ballot boxes the same night of the election, all throughout, like starting at like 7 o'clock. And they did it after dark where nobody would be watching. So they took all of that geofencing data, and I don't know how they ended up determining who were the mules, because they bought like, I don't know how many trillions of pieces of data. And then they started to correlate, okay, who has visited this organization? That's one of those community organizations. What do they call those?
Yeah, right.
That Obama was a part of, Saul Alinsky, like those type of like ballot harvesting organizations. So they started to track who was associated with those organizations that visited the headquarters of those organizations. And then they said, okay, they started to track how many different ballot boxes are these people going to go to. And they ended up with an election-changing conclusion. It happened. They were caught on video. And what Mike and I were talking about right before we came back on the show is that for Dinesh D'Souza, it took him months to do that. But if we would have been able to have that data, I'm just saying, assume for the sake of argument, that we would have been able to present Mike Pence with that information. Remember when Ted Cruz spoke on the floor of Congress on January 6th and said, or what was it? January 6th was the day that they were counting the votes, right?
Yes.
That they were doing the, and he said, it's happened twice in this country.
Certifying the votes, right.
Yeah, it's happened twice. I think it was the Hayes election, way back in the what was it, the 1800s?
1800s, right.
1800s, where they appointed an emergency committee comprised of Supreme Court justices, Congress people, and I forget who else. And they could have done an emergency audit of the election. But it's a catch-22 because unless we have someone positioned at every one of those ballot boxes, we're going to lose this time again.
Well, there's three things you need. Number one, you need voter ID. It's very important that you can verify that you have an eligible voter. We just had over 4 million people cross illegally into this country. I am sure a lot of those people will end up voting in our elections.
Which are the 6 states that you said that don't have the...
Well, there's 6 states that changed the law so you could take the votes after election night. And that's another issue. You cannot, in my opinion, election day should be one day. Any ballots that come in after election day should not count. That way you can tally everything up. And the third thing, there has to be a consequence. Now, notice one thing Ron DeSantis did is he allocated $6 million to hire 50 election police officers, right? Basically, they're using state troopers, made them election police. And what happened in Florida? We were able to get the results out shortly after election night. I mean, an hour within election, you know who won and who lost. And that's the way it should be in every state. But in states like Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, you don't know for weeks who the actual winner is.
Remember, the counting stopped.
Yep.
The counting stopped all at the same time in the multiple states.
So if you want to have free and fair elections, that has to change. And if it doesn't change, then we just became a banana republic.
So how do we do it this time? Okay, the voter ID, but what about Dinesh's post? What about those ballot box stations? Like, how many of those are there, and how do you police that?
Well, you got to realize you're talking about state law now, and every state is different. So it's up to the states. So the state legislator passes the laws, and then it has to be enforced. And if you don't have enforcement, it doesn't matter. Here in Florida, Ron DeSantis decided to put money behind, election police just for that reason, to deter any fraud. But other states are now not as vigilant as we were in Florida. So it comes down to where you live. I mean, true story, 2020, right? One of my friends who was a CID agent, he goes to vote for president. He shows up, and he's a junior, right? And he notices his father signed in before him. And he said to the guy at the precinct, he said, "That's not my father's signature." The guy says, "Don't worry about it." He goes, "What do you mean, don't worry about it? My dad's been dead and buried for 5 years. How could he have come and voted? He's dead."
Wow.
Okay? So
what happened?
Nothing happened. Nothing happened. He was I mean.
What state was this?
New York. New York, one-party state. So
even if we get out to vote, it's not going to make a
it
difference.
depends on the state you're in.
The same ones that made the difference last time.
Yeah, well, that's what has to change. You have to have the legislators realize there's a problem and be willing to change.
And
Some of these states love having one-party states. California, New York, right? You're not going to see a Republican be elected in California for Senate, or you're not going to see a Republican president. It's just the way it is. I mean, Hillary won so large in California. I think she accumulated. She was ahead by 5 million votes, just in that state alone. So no, there has to be some major changes. If you don't have major changes, then you're going to have very compromised elections.
So what's the Republican Party doing about this right now?
Well, it's tough because a lot of the states we're talking about, they have Democratic governors, they have Democratic legislators, and as long as you're in that minority, there's not much you can do other than to mobilize people to vote, start using the same tactics. Ballot harvesting. In California, they won some congressional seats because the Republicans started to ballot harvest, just like the Democrats had when they first passed ballot harvesting out in California. The Democrats slaughtered the Republicans, but 2 years later, the Republicans started using the same tactics and came back and won back a whole bunch of seats. The reason that we have a Republican Congress right now is because the seats that were won in California and New York, two very heavily blue states where Republicans beat their Democratic opponents. And how did they do it? Well, they did it by starting by embracing, some of the new laws and taking advantage of it, and it kind of shocked the Democrats.
What are the chances that the RNC is going to get on board with this and do it nationwide?
Well, I think there's a push for it right now. In states where it's legal to ballot harvest, they're going to be ballot harvesting. That's what's going to happen. Now, it comes down to ground game. It comes down to changes. But the real issue is going to be in swing states, where you're able to count ballots up to 2 weeks after election night.
Yeah, that's
okay.
That needs to be a federal law that prohibits that.
Well, yeah, but that's not gonna. That'll never get past a Democratic Senate and a Democratic president. That would never happen. So, you need some divine intervention, because otherwise, it's going to be the same old routine. If you allow people to count ballots 2 weeks after election night, there's just too much room for error, too much room for fraud, too much room for problems. And then the people don't know who their elected officials are for weeks later. That's just not right.
No, it's not.
That's just not right. That's not right. So do you want to talk about what you're doing now as an attorney, or
we
so like you want to plug for anything? You can put a plug in for yourself if you'd like.
We can
Give
just
you an opportunity.
they can reach me at
Tell
whatever
me,
number Mike's got.
Yeah. Well, you want to give out a number, you can. If you want to get a website, you want people to look at.
You can just give my number is 754-224-8854. 754-224-8854. Feel free to call me.
Yeah. We definitely wanted to make sure that we plugged you a little bit. Appreciate you having you on the show. We still got a couple of minutes left. But so what do you think going forward? Do you think there's going to be changes? Do you think it's over? What do you think's going to happen?
One of the things that I'm concerned about is that people are going to think that their vote doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Especially on the Republican side. The Democrats are going to cheat again. Anybody that saw 2,000 Mules, I was having this conversation with Roger Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that saw 2,000 Mules sees the risk. But it's like you were saying, you can't gather that data in time for that session in Congress where the electoral votes are counted.
Right.
So it was too little too late, but the fact that we have the 2,000 Mules data, that we know that happened, should put a light of fire under everybody's butt to go make sure that it doesn't happen.
Well,
again.
Thank you for being on the show. We had a great time tonight. Thank you for watching. We appreciate you viewing us, and we'll be seeing you direct from Ocala next show. Thank you very much. Meet the Experts, Mike Velarde. Thank you, Elsa, for being part of our show. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Meet the Experts with Mike Velarde. For more information, contact Mike at 888-994-4995, Studio A. Join us next time for another exciting show.